Hi, I'm Dan Kubisky with the Society of Professional Journalists in the United States. November 2nd was International Day to End Impunity for Crimes Against Journalists. In Mexico, it was also Day of the Dead, when the people there honor and remember their late loved ones. For a few years now, the Tijuana Press has set up a traditional Day of the Dead altar honoring the journalists killed in Mexico. This year, besides paying special attention to the 10 journalists killed so far in Mexico, the Tijuana Press included journalists killed in Gaza. Joining me to talk about the convergence of the end of impunity and the Day of the Dead, and to get an update on the situation in Mexico, is the founder and editor of the Tijuana Press and a good friend of the SPJ International Community, Vicente Calderon. Vicente, thank you very much for taking the time to be here. I'm glad we finally got our schedules matched up so we could do this.
Thank you for the invitation, Dan, as always.
Yep. I find it ironic that Ending Impunity Day also falls during the Day of the Dead period. So could you tell us a bit about the altar that you have been setting up year after year, and how you have drawn on the traditions of Day of the Dead to bring attention to the violence against journalists in Mexico?
Well, this is a very humble and symbolic gesture. We find out around 2015 that UNESCO designated the second day of November as you mentioned, the International Day to End Impunity and Crimes Against Journalists after the killing in 2013 of two French journalists in Mali. But nobody was paying attention to this commemoration here in Mexico, in this northern part especially of the country, where we unfortunately we have a long history of violence against the press. So every Mexican knew that the second day of November is the Day of the Dead, and everybody's trying to get ready to go and visit the cemeteries, get together with their loved ones, and also setting up this old tradition of setting the altar, some kind of shrine with regular marigold flowers, those colorful kind of orangey flowers, the sugar skulls, the candlelight. So the traditional elements that symbolize not just to remember, but a new encounter with the souls of our loved ones who have passed away. So we decided that since nobody was paying attention to this, and with the history that we have here in Tijuana, it should be something that we could use to bring attention to this other very important subject, not just for the Tijuana Press or press corps locally, but also to the society in general. So in 2016, when unfortunately was a very terrible year for journalists in Mexico, especially in the state of Veracruz and the Gulf of Mexico, we decided that we need to bring attention to this. So we decided to use this combination of this very old tradition, very close to our hearts in Mexico, but also mixing those elements of a traditional shrine or altar de muertos with what we call the tools of the trade. All television sets, all cameras, all radios, all newspapers. And we were playing a little bit with the old diet technology since we have that important change. So in 2016, we set up the first one, and it did a good response, but mainly has been growing because unfortunately we haven't seen that much of a progress in that sense. We did see a little bit of reduction of the level of impunity, but still, it's terrible.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. I mean, you're pulling together really one of the most festive holiday seasons in Mexico. At least from my years there, I remember it as being a very festive period, with some very tragic results from what's happening to the journalists. Bringing these two together, the memorial of people who have gone before us and the dangers journalists face. Have you seen any kind of influence that is helping protect your colleagues in journalism?
Well, it's difficult to say and to take credit in any way for that matter, but I know that it's now something that at least locals are more accustomed to remember now. I mean, the thing is that for us the Mexicans, we have this belief that nobody dies unless you forget about them, and this particular day is just to revive or bring them back from the dead and to relive their love for them and to remember them. And we have seen that, oh, well, unfortunately, impunity it's a problem all across the board in Mexico. It's not just against journalists, but we always remember that when you kill a journalist, you have a ripple effect on the society because you are silencing silencing many other voices, and people is afraid. And we know also that there's a lot of people and reporters here locally in Mexico that are being self-censored just of the concern of to put their safety on the line. So I guess one of the main things is that bring to the conscious of the community this problem and be pushing the authorities to do a little bit more. We do see some changes, but unfortunately, those changes have to do more with the recent killings. You have to remember in 2022, we have two colleagues killed in less than a week. So we have authorities locally have increased the penalty for killing a journalist. We do have a more formal mechanism of protection in the state level, not just the federal level. So I mean, we are just an element that is joining forces with other members of the society that are pressuring the authorities to do something. At the end of the day, we just need to bring impunity down in general and
Right.
bring people accountable. But also, we are noticing that due to this level of this perception of the high risk of journalism, many young people here in Tijuana is not joining the press corps. They don't want to go to practice journalism. And I think this is happening not just in Tijuana, but in other parts of the country
Right.
and probably around the world. And we take this opportunity to tell them, hey, journalism could be dangerous, it's troubling in some aspects, but is still alive. And we need it more than in any other times I see with the current environment across the world.
Right. One of the things that I've noticed in the past year or two, and maybe it's you can tell us if this has been a little bit longer, but people in the community, just regular people, have developed a greater appreciation for journalists because uh, you have been there to tell the stories of their loved ones who have been affected by the crimes, have been affected by bad government policies, and so you're while it's still a dangerous profession, and I think Mexico continues to remain the most dangerous place except for war zones. Unfortunately, there seems to be within cities and or communities that there's an appreciation for what journalists do in terms of telling stories.
I think there's a little bit of that, but the problem is that we have the government and government officials from the president down in Mexico, just like it's happening in the US, accusing journalists on being part of the problem and being, in
Mm.
our case, in the Mexicans, we are conservatives, we are members of the elite, we are a tool for propaganda for neoliberals who wanted to regain control from the leftist government. They have called us hitmen of the pen. Uh, President Lopez Obrador did it, and now it hasn't changed that much with the current president Claudia Sheinbaum, which is basically the same under the same ideology, and they are also corrupting the press when it's willing to just go with the flow and just diffusing or dispersing propaganda from them. It's not very much different what you are seeing in the states. Uh, the only problem is that we are with a ideological different structures, so to speak, or geometry, if you will. But people, one of the things I learned when I began working as a reporter here at the border, when I was crossing to cover San Diego, California, the perception of the journalist was better, was our journalist was better regarded in my perspective locally in the Mexican side, because with even with when we had government control media, the community turned to the reporters as the last resource to denounce a problem and to fix some local problems. And probably has to do with that. We have more basic problems from the beginning, from infrastructure in our urban communities. Um, you have to keep in mind also that I began in working in around 85, 86. Still, Watergate thing was recent, and the Pentagon Papers wasn't that long ago, and was fresh on the memory on the power of the press. But also they were closing to be more able to manage communication than the states. Things have been changing a lot, and you have people who see it from both sides, but also with this level of polarization that we are also suffering here in Mexico. You either love the press or hate the press. And this is what we are seeing also in this environment. That's why we thought that was more relevant to do right now.
Yeah. Yeah, you had mentioned you're continuing to have problems with the national government. I was going to ask you, have things changed under the new president? Because she made promises. She made
Oh yeah,
promises that things would be better for journalists. Uh, are these promises unkept?
I think so. I mean, she hasn't produced any real results. And again, one of the proofs is that we have so far 10 reporters killed in the whole country. We have another one that just announced us yesterday, told us on a video message in whole social media that he was threatened after covering an incident in central Mexico. Um, I always keep in mind that the numbers vary, because in some organization count everybody who works with the media as in that list. Others, until they are more sure that they are linked to their reporting job or some event related to journalism. But the problem is that even this lower number, the low number, is very high, and we haven't seen that much of a change. She's continuing to complain about the media every time that she's criticized, and she thinks that we are tools of the right, as she said here in the Mexican political geometry, and that we are paid elements for the business elite of Mexico. And we have talked about this before. When the top official does it,
Mm.
emboldens the local officials and then many other members of the community. So we are under that. Also, we have seen new problems. Like, it's now more common that you could be sued, especially accused of gender-based violence. Some new
Oh,
rulings, some new laws that were created and approved by local and national Congress to defend the rights of women. But in many cases, this has been abused even for governors. Like the Sansores from state of Campeche, the governor of Campeche, sued a reporter who was already retired because some publications that they did. And the mayor of Acapulco, another lady that is with the Morena party, also resorted to an accusation against reporters complaining that gender-based violence in Mexico. Also, our colleague from Al Jazeera, who was part of the panel that we were organizing this time, was saying he has seen also that since 2018, I think, the cap on the amount of money that you can demand in a lawsuit for defamation got higher, or it was like freed. So now many people is using this type of new tools that are to pressure journalism in general. So we are talking, when we talk about the day of the day altar, we are talking about the extreme cases, which are the killings. But reporters are facing these other new threats. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be killed, but
Wow.
it's a way also to censor and to silence the dissident voices.
When you say that they're using the gender-based bias law against them, is this when news organizations have something critical to say about a female government official, and then they're claim they those officials then come back and claim the only reason that people are being critical is because that person is a woman?
Yes, we have a relatively recent new law defending or trying to stop gender-based political violence in Mexico. So it has been cases from candidates that was one of the first one where a publication from Central Mexico published some very provocative uh, pictures that one candidate posed for a gentleman magazine. So these were pictures that were already published. The media says, well, in the background of this candidate, she has this previous way of presenting themselves. She posed for not completely nude, but scanty dress pictures. She ended up suing this publication, and she won. Was relatively new. I think they were not savvy enough. The publication was not savvy enough to deal with this aspect. But this was something that was already published way before the journalistic article. And she was just referring to the way she was presenting her as was part of her background as a candidate. Well, we saw those cases, and now we've seen an increase of the use in a non-really legal or legitimate way to silence reporters when they are criticizing not just public officials, but those more are the string cases for us.
Okay. Um, well, that's a whole new aspect I really hadn't focused on or heard much about before. Uh, Thank you very much for that information. Uh, is is there anything that the international journalism community writ large can do to continue to show in ways that we can show support and provide assistance to journalists in Mexico in your struggle for safety? Basically.
Well, we need to improve safety conditions for all in general in Mexico, as we have spoken in the past. Here, they kill journalists, but also they kill lawyers, they kill doctors, they kill kids, they kill females. They need to bring down the impunity level in general. In the case of journalists, I think my main concern right now is the lack of resources for the advocacy in general. But we are seeing this problem everywhere. US aid was investing a lot of money with many programs who were giving more tools and more training for reporters to be in better conditions. Unfortunately, as we have said before, the market in Mexico doesn't give the reporter, the employee of a media organization, much time for training. I mean, you have quotas on the number of stories that you have to file daily. And when you are taken away from the normal day from the newsroom, the editors will always complain that they are losing a lot of resources. So if you are going to spend a day on training session, it's not easy for the reporter to get this opportunity. I've seen through the years how impactful in a positive way was this cooperation helping local organizations and even international organizations who has a presence of advocacy in terms of freedom of the press. I'm really concerned about with all these cuts and with the economical situation in general, how this will traduce or become reality in the ground. And I seen some improvements in general and the capabilities of the media in Mexico. They have acquired or have been more willing to go with international standards. Where I see a lot of more participation of female journalists. We have to
Hmm.
recognize that some of the best journalism in Mexico has been produced lately in the last 10, 15 years by women, or in teams where women are a big part of this equation. And we have better journalism, but we also are facing more inclined to authoritarian governments or regimes in Mexico. And for example, we are losing our counterpart of the sunshine laws. The transparency laws has been also reduced in Mexico.
Ooh,
So that's another area where we can find or use some help from the international or the U.S. Media and advocacy organizations or foundations. I saw that there's a lot of investment or interest in local news, and but we haven't seen that touching in the Mexican side of the local news. And you have to see that also there's this environment that is very different than in the U.S. because um, the way media in general, the big companies in media in Mexico are structured is very different and
right,
is not as a free market as it is in the U.S.
right, right. Um, I I know you've got a very busy schedule. I just want to ask just one last thing. Is there, I want to appreciate first your time to talk about the situation here. Do you have any last words? Just anything else that you'd like to talk about uh, that we haven't discussed so far?
I mean, I know that this is a very difficult time for us in Mexico, but also for you guys in the States. Journalism is not necessarily in the best shape in the U.S. either. But still, for that matter, we need to talk more often. I think we need to communicate better and to see what are the options in the current environment and with the changes that we are seeing. Um, I also have to. I don't want to talk about impunity without mentioning our colleagues in Gaza, because I mean this is extraordinary. This is. I mean we are in great shape if you compare to what's going on in Gaza, and people has forget a little bit about it or has been put out of the radar after this announced quote unquote ceasefire, which is not really happening, and and we haven't seen that much report skilled yet, but a couple of those a couple of them have came after the ceasefire. The numbers are staggering. There's organizations that are claiming about 250. So we need to see where the needs are greater and try to use the few resources that we have and the best productive way. So we just need to keep talking, and I really appreciate you making the effort. You've been so patient to try to come up with our schedules, but this is really important. I mean, the altar has been growing in presence, so to speak, because of the kindness and generous, and because you recognize the importance of the effort. Is this is just a minor little effort, but in the whole conjunction of what we have to do in these current times, I think is really more needed than in the past.
Well, but thank you very much. I mean, I hope you do realize that if there's anything we can ever do, to support you. We don't have a lot of money in the SPJ, but we do have some voices, and we are ready to stand with you and make our voices heard on your behalf if you ever need us to do so. Vicente Calderon, founder editor of Tijuana Press. Great international journalist. Thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you for your work, Dan, and for your solidarity too.